Welcome to the Resilient Butterfly Podcast. My goal is to share inspiring stories of healing and recovery through many diverse approaches and models. Our guests bring incredible lived experiences, insights, and/or professional expertise, each with their own unique path. While we highlight and celebrate these stories, our intention is to inform, inspire, and demonstrate resilience and creativity. This podcast does not endorse any one approach. We believe there is more than one way to heal, and we're here to showcase the resilience and possibilities that exist. Welcome to Resilient Butterfly, the podcast where we explore the transformative power of resilience and healing. I'm your host, Pam Feinberg-Rivkin, and today I'm honored to welcome a truly remarkable guest, Dr. Leyden. Dr. Leyden is a globally recognized trauma healing expert, spiritual mentor, and humanitarian. Her journey from personal trauma to global healing leadership is nothing short of inspiring. She's the founder of Create Global Healing and the visionary behind Project Light, Rwanda. Her work has touched lives from genocide survivors in Rwanda to victims of the Sandy Hook tragedy. Dr. Leyden also produced with Rwanda survivors, When I Was Young, I Said I Would Be Happy, which is truly inspirational. Well, thank you, Lori, for coming here. I really appreciate. I only met you a brief period of time, and the first phone call was so connected that I felt we had been friends for many, many years, and so inspired by your own journey, what you've created in your life, and how you've used your method of healing for some major genocides and shootings and so forth. So I want to start out, Lori, with your personal journey. What brought you onto this path?
Thank you. And thank you. I totally agree. The first time we met, it was as if there were just too many synchronicities. And so I just love that.
I do too.
Yeah. And I'm thrilled to be on your show. So I would say that my journey started with my desire to heal my own childhood trauma and try to make sense of what was happening for me as a child. And so when I say it's a selfish journey, I did all of this work to heal myself first. And then, because I know you on your own healing journey, Pam, literally, whatever we choose to heal in ourselves sets up a resonance field for that healing to unfold with others. So our greatest service work in the world is healing ourselves. But what led me to Rwanda, so interesting. So I had been in private practice and attracted a number of people who had PTSD. And in my own journey to heal, I just shared with them what I was doing, which led to my first book, The Stress Management Handbook, Strategies for Health and Inner Peace. And then I had always been connected to this, to genocide and the horror that this was happening in our lifetimes.
Why were you always connected to the genocide?
Yeah, so
unusual.
Yes, it is. I'm not Jewish, although I was Jewish by marriage for a few years. But there was something in me when I read the diary of Anne Frank, and then I saw what was unfolding in the world, and I thought we can never have genocide again. And then Serbo-Croatia, and then, all the various genocides that have unfolded. But I remember in particular watching scenes of the genocide in Rwanda, and so when I got an email in 2007 that said, can we translate your first book into Kinyarwanda, which is the language of Rwanda, my heart leapt. I felt this quickening in my soul that, and you might find this humorous, but at the time I was programming to meet my spiritual romantic partner.
Rwanda became that spiritual romantic.
Exactly. That was my lover. And when I say that, like, what did I have to do to prepare myself? Because the first thing I said was yes. yes. And what else can I do? And they said, please come and teach your trauma healing skills to our widows and orphans. And I said, yes. And then I said, how the heck am I going to do that? Because
Because
obviously,
there are hundreds of thousands of people, right? And you were used to probably a group, a small group, or one-on-one. And then
yeah,
how do you
right, right,
unfold that?
right. And so when I did receive that invitation and said yes, I spent 3 months diving deeply into my own shadow work, diving into what part of me could relate to someone who had murdered 100 people. What part of me could feel connected to a woman who had been raped and her family slaughtered and she herself living with AIDS. How could I be present to orphan head of households who were 6 to 8 years old at the time of the genocide and were given 2 to 6 other children to raise with no visible means of support? So I spent that summer, and I know it was divinely guided because I would have probably, looked at my academia work and looked and created slides and programs and all of that. But instead, it was, could I be fully present in my heart? And so all of that uh, was really sharing my trauma journey. What did I want most when I was 12 years old at the height of my trauma? I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to know that I mattered. I wanted to be loved, and I wanted to be rescued from this situation I was in, which, interestingly enough, I was a in charge at the age of 12 of my infant sister and 3 siblings due to some mental health issues in the family. And it wasn't until I stood before 100 orphan head of households in Rwanda that I felt this moment of grace, that everything I had ever experienced prepared me for this moment,
Wow.
and that I wouldn't give up any of it. And so
So that was a healing process for you.
yes, exactly, exactly. And their compassion for me when we shared our stories, even though my story was just a microcosm. But that's when I knew we were in this infinity circuit of healing where there appears to be a giver and there appears to be a receiver. But when we meet in that sweet spot in the middle, there's only love and we're all transformed. And so I partner, I was able to partner with these people. And then and I guess I skipped over kind of a big part, which was in 2003. I had a near-death experience, and in which I received this message that I was to follow my heart wherever it led me, and that it was important to learn how to receive. Because as trauma survivors, receiving can be
Sure.
fearful and unhealthy and abusive. So as children, we need to learn those boundaries.
Would you go in for some of the listeners, because I know some listeners out there don't know your story when you were 12, and you write about it in the book.
Right.
And I think it's important for some people to hear that so that they can really connect with you on the level of why you have gone where you've gone.
Yes. Thank you for that. Um, and when we're on this healing journey, it's like, oh my gosh, that was a part of my life that I've healed now, so I don't feel the triggers from it. And of course, I want to give this gift to other people so that they have the memories without having the trigger. So, grew up in an Irish Catholic dysfunctional family, as many of us have.
They don't have to be Irish Catholic, but
No, exactly. I got a list. Yeah. I remember learning that from some researcher that 97% of us come from dysfunctional families. And in my advanced age, I have yet to meet anyone in the 3% category. I don't know about you.
I don't know. They are either.
So, Irish Catholic family, dad is a policeman making a very small amount of money. We're a family of seven. Mom has some mental health issues that begin to decline after the birth of our infant sister. And at the same time, my grandmother, who was my protector and my inspiration, was dying of cancer. And I had overheard a conversation between my mother and my grandmother, in which my grandmother shared this Irish thing that there's one new life for one old life. And that if she went into the hospital before my mother gave birth to my sibling, that she would die.
Mm.
And that's exactly what happened, which is pretty profound for a 12-year-old trying to figure all that out.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
2 days later, during the funeral, my mother came home from the hospital and handed me a days old infant, and I was to take care of my youngest sister and my three siblings for the next 2 years. At the same time, I was a highly religious child. I was seeking comfort in my religion, and I also did volunteer work in the sacristy of the church. And long story short, was one of those individuals who, at the age of 12, was molested by my parish priest, who I equated with God.
Mm.
And I won't go into all the details, but that led me on a search for who is God? What is
Right.
God?
Right.
And as I look back now, I mean, I wouldn't be a spiritual teacher or a spiritual mentor had I not been triggered to go on that search. So, for a very young age, I was in search of what is this sense of something more? And
Mhm.
what is, I'm hearing about this loving God, but I'm not seeing evidence of it
Sure.
in terms of what the church is teaching. And so all of this was so I learned then to try to cover my shame and my trauma by achieving, right?
Mhm.
If there was any way to do something harder, faster, with more pain and struggle, I figured it out. So by the time I
It's a
went to,
natural reaction.
yeah, it's one of them.
Right.
Uh, and just understanding what is driving you, right? Because I wanted to be worthy, I wanted to be deserving, because the trauma had triggered in me that there was something wrong with me. And we all have our individual traumas that we really can't compare to anyone else's. But it's acknowledging when someone says to me, "Oh no, I had a great childhood, it was all perfect." I say, "Ooh, okay, we got some work to do." And it's not to blame the parents or the
Yeah.
family dynamics, because we all come to this unhealed. And I think you and I both are on a crusade to get people to relieve the shame and the guilt
Right.
of trauma. So that's been really driving me all this time. And who would have known that after this near death experience in 2003, where I asked for what is the best form of, what is a new level of healing that I can bring in and work with, because current levels, uh, at least in my experience, are painful.
Right.
And
Most of them are.
right,
E
exactly.
especially when they're supposed to be, effective treatment, right?
Yes. Yeah. So then you have to, well, there's so many avenues we could go down, but I became very passionate about finding the most elegant ways for people to heal, because I personally had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on every known therapy and unknown therapies and sketchy therapies, and in
Right.
an effort to find, how do we heal from wholeness instead of brokenness? And so everything that I've experienced in my life and the deeper inquiry I did to help heal myself is the foundation for what brings me into communities uh, where I can literally see the miracles that are possible through terrible pain and heartache.
Now, I know you went several times to Rwanda over a period of a number of years. Were there 8 times that you went?
18.
18.
18.
18. Wow. Oh, my goodness.
For a month at a time. Uh, uh,
And that was over how many years?
10 years.
10 years. Incredible. Yeah. And then it built into the Rwandan citizens helping with the Sandy Hook victims,
Yes. Yeah.
the survivors of Sandy Hook. And
Right.
we'll get into that a little bit. I want to go back to you've created methods. And when you first showed up in Rwanda, what was your first method to use for this community? And where did you start and how did it unfold?
So at the time, I had been doing something called emotional freedom techniques / tapping, which many people have heard of. I use the clinical form of EFT versus the self-care form that many people are familiar with. And I knew that I couldn't do one-on-one sessions. So I knew that I needed to work with large groups. And how was I going to do that? So this was going to be my toolkit, as well as all of the techniques and strategies I had developed to help people with trauma. But what I learned in 2007, which is when I was preparing to go to Rwanda, was I began to understand the brain dysfunction that trauma creates. And up to that point in 2000, we're only now just talking about the vagus nerve and how trauma affects the brain. But at that time, people were believing that what they saw in people's trauma response, they were thinking that that was an emotional issue that people should just be able to get over by talking about it. And what we know is that you need to use somatic release techniques that regulate physiology so that people feel safe even as they're processing the trauma. So many people never finish their trauma healing work because, unfortunately, the majority of professionals have not been trained in somatic release work. And then what I learned for myself first was the healer must attend to healing themselves first.
Sure.
And so
you
this
can't
is
expect a non-healer or someone that is still in trauma or haven't worked through it to stand up and be able to heal others. It's just the energy of the work is so important.
Exactly. But we don't support our healing arts professionals in doing that. We don't, there isn't even a curriculum on mastering therapeutic presence, which requires that inner work.
Interesting. Wow. That's not something I thought that there would have been a curriculum on that, or at least just some study on that to be able to master that.
Well, you have to extrapolate from what the Heart Math Institute is doing and the Institute for Noetic Sciences, and about heart coherence. And this is why, because of my experience in Rwanda of being able to sit with the worst of human tragedies, uh, I have now become very passionate about teaching people how can you be fully present if you have judgments about your client or the people you're serving or the government agency you're working in or the institutional and the cultural blockages to healing, all of that stuff. But in 2003, after the near-death experience, when I asked for what was the next level of work, I received a formula. And I said, what am I going to do with a formula? Seriously. But I went in search of the evidence that this formula actually worked. And I was able to find Greg Braden's work, The Divine Matrix, Joseph Chilton Pierce, who talks about the biology of transcendence, David Hawkins, Power versus Force, and so many others that literally there it was in a book, the validation of the formula that I was working with. And I thought,
That's
my,
interesting.
it's so, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling.
It sure is.
And so I introduced this into my private practice and started doing groups where I live. And then I added the EFT to this formula for the somatic release work. And really, what I found through my private practice and this humanitarian work, which continues today, is that this formula really works, and that literally you can release your traumas far more compassionately than.
Is it a good time for you to describe this formula? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. I read your book, and as I got further and further into the book, it made more and more sense, and I literally felt like I was embodying this feeling that you described. So go ahead. I won't. I don't want
Yeah.
to.
No, thank you. It's really a three-pronged approach, and I call it the Embodying Grace Heart Map. And when I use the word grace, when I got it in meditation 22 years ago, I said, really, do I really have to call it the grace process? Because, grace is too religious and I don't want it to be, I want it to be spiritual, but not religious. And the message was, patience, have patience. And do we not use the word grace all the time
Well,
now?
the word graceful has always been something that I found something to embody myself, be graceful in anything you do. So it's
Mm-hmm.
off grace, but I always consider grace as more religious too, but graceful was something different. But uh, it's all connected, obviously, and you consider it a spirituality event or.
Well, I define grace as that feeling of deep inner safety and inner peace, even if it's just for a moment. Sense that I'm connected, the sense of the miraculous, the sense of the possibilities. And in my experience working in traumatized communities, I knew that if I could bring myself fully present and drop my ego and drop my personality, that there was like this other channel that opened. It was a connection to the divine. And that's where I could sit in the trust that whatever I needed in the moment would be there for me. Now, I mean, that's a complicated answer in itself, but it's a trust in myself. And this is what I really want to offer people is that ability to be fully present no matter what we are experiencing. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so much to say. Remind me where we are.
Well, I want to
Oh,
go
yeah.
back to the formula and where it ends up as grace, but the
Yes, thank you.
combination of what it is that ends up as grace. And well, while you're going to say that, I'm going to say every morning I sit and look out at the water where I live, and the mirroring in the water, the shadows in the water in the morning is that moment that I feel. So gratitude, joy. Oh, I just slipped. Gratitude, love,
Love,
joy,
love, joy,
and wonderment.
yes.
Gratitude, love, joy, wonderment.
Um, and I'm going to say something about that after I come back a minute. So there are three pillars to the Embodying Grace Heart Map. And my thing is, look, you can do your gratitude journaling, you can do your yoga, you can meditate, but if you get off the mat and you yell at your spouse or kick the cat, you're not embodying
Mm,
the values that you're practicing.
mm.
So the first thing is heart, brain, body coherence. And I could say a lot about this, but the Heart Math Institute is showing us that the heart is the major organ in the brain. The heart develops the rest of the organs in the human fetus. The heart has its own brain that matches the cells in the prefrontal cortex. And so when we are in negative states of fear and survival, we're triggering our reptilian brain, which basically takes us offline in our thinking and just focuses on survival. But when we're in those positive states of gratitude, love, joy, and wonder, the heart is able to have this optimized communication with the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of all of our divine human gifts: intuition, creative problem solving, a sense of connectedness, that aha, the inner wisdom, the notion that there's something beyond myself. And so in those places, we have access to those divine gifts. And Greg Braden talks about the connection between our own um, resonance field and the resonance field of the earth, and we're all connected through this, what quantum physics is showing us. So I believe that our heart, brain, body heart wires us for our divinity, that the body is the perfect vehicle for our enlightenment. And then we move to what I call the 5 stages of embodied grace. I don't know about you, but when I started my spiritual journey, there was no map. There was no, it's like,
It's all over the place.
thank you. You mean I have to go to India and sit on the top of a mountain in a loincloth for 6 months? That's not going to happen. So these 5 stages describe where we are in any moment. Are we in separation from the divine? Meaning, are we feeling alone, disconnected? Why me? Are we in that constant rumination? And then when the pain of that sense of separation from ourselves and others becomes so great, we move into this phase of trying to figure it out, like I did. I'm going to go to the websites, webinars, and the order all the books, and go to the, listen to my favorite teachers, and looking for the answers outside of myself.
Yeah.
And so in those places now, we want to move into surrender and stillness. Surrender, not giving up, but giving into our natural abilities, giving into what we're here to do, giving up a sense of control over things we have no control over. And in those moments of stillness, that's where we can trust the inspiration that's coming through. And then the 5th stage is synergy, which is once our internal systems are synergized, we begin to look outside of ourselves to partner with people in our passions for healing the world. So that's the second part, which says, hey, I can figure out where I am in my stages. I can regulate my physiology so that I can be able to be available for transformation. And as you know, when our brain is dysregulated, we are not available for healing.
No.
And so this formula, drum roll, please. So the formula is called the grace process. It starts with choosing our intention. What is it that you want the freedom from, so you have the freedom to? I like to balance those 2 things, because often we are only focused on what we don't want. But we need to be focused on what we do want. So in that intention setting, then we look at what part. So the first part of the formula is all about ego, negative ego, and how negative ego holds us back. So we look at, what are all the judgments I have about this intention? Judgments about myself, other people, circumstances, the divine. And so I like to use this example, which is outmoded now, but thinking about, oh, you want to bring in your spiritual romantic partner, right? So what were all the judgments I had about that? I'm too old. My profession is too weird. Nobody's really gonna, kind of put up with what I'm trying to
We
accomplish.
can make up a lot of stuff.
And thank you. And then, how did my parents indoctrinate what was supposed to happen for relationships and all of that? And circumstances. You look at circumstances. Well, I'm too busy racing around the world to blah, blah, blah. And again, not that these things are true, but that's where I look at where my ego is trying to protect me in a way, but really holding me back with
Mm-hmm.
old contracts I made. So that's the place we work in the formula. How can we transcend those judgments so that we can open to forgiveness? And in that forgiveness piece, the judgments become discernment. They don't become a triggering thing. Judgment is against something versus let me evaluate objectively
Mm-hmm.
when I'm regulated. I have more insight, I have more clarity. Now, moving into forgiveness is a tough situation for people with trauma. And I'm not saying that this is a quick fix, but entertaining forgiveness. Who needs to be forgiven in order for me to focus more clearly on what it is that I want? So, in this part of the formula, it's really about what do I want more than my grief and my trauma?
And when
Because
you
I
say forgiveness, do you say the forgiveness is first to forgive yourself and then forgive others for whatever you may have been thought of? Because we always think how badly we shame is kind of the internal mechanism that runs a lot of things.
totally. And so it depends on each person, right? Because my natural instinct was to make everything my fault. But other people who are traumatized make it other people's fault. Or so we meet the individual where they are in the moment. Because, for example, if I'm blaming my mother for distorting my dreams about how I'm going to meet a man, then that's what I need to clear. Whatever judgments about myself. This is why I put them in 4
Makes
categories,
sense.
right?
Yeah.
What is one of my big things was what is little Lori Leyden from the smallest state in the country ever going to accomplish? Well, I had to forgive that. I had to unwind where that myth came from. And even when I was accomplishing all these things, I didn't necessarily recognize it because I was still in this space of thinking that I was a flawed person, not good enough.
Sure.
So it's that place of judgment and forgiveness. And what I find uh, is that EFT, using clinical EFT, when we regulate our physiology, we come up with the aha. We come up with the answers ourselves as opposed to someone telling us what the answer is. And so that I call, the F word, forgiveness. It takes a lot of courage to explore
Mm-hmm.
what we need to forgive in ourselves and other people. Um, I mean, you and I shared a story. I explained something about my physical health in the last year, and there was a situation of medical malpractice, which led to a lot of
Right.
pain. However, I learned to forgive the doctor, the medical system, the pathology report, the hospital room, the whatever, so that I could focus on what it is that I wanted, so that my dreaming and my
Yeah, this is a
visualization.
good point because there's so many people that are physically injured, and the minute that something happens, they want to sue, and it takes years and years, and they're in pain and physically can't get out, mindfully as well as physically can't get out of that pain, emotional and physical, to be able to live a life versus I'm suing for whatever, how much, blah, blah, blah. And that goes on, as I said, for years. It could be 5, 10 years before somebody's, and then what has happened to their life.
Exactly. Well, we could that's a whole
Yeah.
other show. um, but the ability to contemplate uh, now, forgiving the doctor and the institution doesn't mean that I don't take action, but it means that I am clear in my body and my heart and my brain to focus on my own healing.
How do you separate those two?
So here's the thing. You know that the term pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Mhm.
So I have experienced great pain, physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. Um, but here's the difference between I'm experiencing this pain, and this pain is extreme. But if I don't have a story about that pain, I will not suffer.
Mm.
Now, again, this is a huge, you and I have
The story
talked.
that goes along with everything.
Yeah, exactly. No, but the story meaning, do
Mm.
you have a suffering story about this? I
Mhm.
wouldn't be in this position if the doctor didn't do blah blah blah. I'm not saying that's not important and it's not true, but I want to be able, that's a fact. It happened, and I
Mhm.
don't want it to trigger me or to derail me from the healing that I'm seeking. I don't want it to derail me in the gratitude and the love and the joy and the wonder of connectedness that might heal me.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, it doesn't mean we forget. It simply means that we take our own physiology back, that we are in charge of how we feel inside of ourselves.
Mhm.
And again, this is where we do the work in this part of the formula. It's all
Sure.
about transcending the ego, because then we get afraid. Well, if I forgive, does that mean that it didn't matter? Does it mean that what happened to me wasn't important? And we know none of that is true. But this frees us to achieve heart coherence. And in those places of heart coherence, which are those four uh, energies, I don't even call them emotions, the gratitude, love, joy, and wonder, we begin to vibrate or connect with resonance fields um, that are greater than we are.
Mm.
And this is, I think, what explains, how gurus are able to hold space for healing for people, because we've shown that whoever is in the highest resonance in the room, other people's heart, brain, body will entrain to
Mm.
that higher. Because it
Vibration.
also explains the mob mentality.
Ah.
Um, But in and you can achieve heart coherence even if you're still grappling with an issue. And when you're in those places like, nature, everybody feels connected. Many people feel connected in nature with their pets, with, whatever awesome thing is happening with the weather. When we're in those places, it's easier then to contemplate my judgments. It's easier to release what needs forgiveness, because I want everyone to have this sense of peace and safety that I have. So it's useful because so many people are in survival guilt, right?
Yeah.
How can I be this lucky, or should me going to Rwanda, should I laugh? Is it okay to be funny?
Right. You almost go to for me going to Rwanda. You may have felt that same way. Like you when you're saying it, is like I'm going to go there and I have to be very still and very dour, sour. Be able to absorb the trauma, and that's the exact opposite of what a healer needs to do. Is not absorb the trauma, but be able to, yeah.
So that you can even see the miracles. Like, because of the work that I've done on myself and because of these environments that I've worked in, I know that miracles come out of the worst of human tragedies. I know resilience is the human spirit.
Right. Talk about
Uh,
that. You talk about your documentary that you made for with the people in Rwanda that showed their resilience and also their connection to the Sandy Hook, and where
yes,
where people could actually view that as well.
yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, it was a long time in the making. I actually didn't even know we were making a documentary. We were just filming things, and then all of a sudden, it was like, wait a minute, something's unfolding here that I didn't even know. And so through my time in Rwanda, I adopted a residential high school with teenagers. Half of 650 teenagers' parents were in jail for having murdered their classmates' parents.
Mm.
And the other half of the 350, obviously were orphans themselves. And they lived in this remote location. No white people ever went up there because there wasn't any electricity. There just wasn't gas. There wasn't things that we could do. Anyway, I began every time I came home from Rwanda, my heart, instead of breaking, my heart would break open
Mm.
for what's possible. And I thought, I can't keep going back and doing trauma healing because that's not enough. You have Trauma healing is just the start. But if you don't have economic sustainability and you haven't healed the hatred in your heart, you can't become a heart-centered leader. You can't become sustainable. So I put those three aspects together in a program called Project Light. And I laugh because it's like being a little pregnant. If you knew the whole thing, you might choose, I don't know, a different approach. Uh, but I became a little pregnant with Project Light, and it couldn't go back, and you couldn't go forward.
Mhm.
So I asked for the headmaster to recommend 12 orphan genocide survivors to our program. I, he selected them. I knew nothing about them. I just knew they were very traumatized. We put them through a month of training with EFT, with the grace process. And after the month, we supported them with small businesses, or we sent them to university. And we followed them for the next, well, we're still following them now, but for the next year and a half, we followed their progress. We documented the progress. And my vision for Project Light was, if traumatized young people could connect with other traumatized young people for healing, that was going to be the money clip, because young people don't want to talk to adults that they don't think have experienced
Sure.
what they've experienced. But I kind of gave up on that dream. It was a pretty big dream of connecting traumatized young people all over the world. Um, and the documentary was not wrapping up. We didn't have an ending. There were difficulties and whatever it was. And I finally forgave myself for feeling I was responsible. Um, and the next thing I knew, we're in Sandy Hook, and JT, who lost his brother, Jesse, in the school shooting, was very angry. We were working with his mom, but he just didn't want to hear anything about tapping or therapy. He's 12 years old. And I went into his room one night and I said, "Hey, would you want to talk to my kids in Rwanda? They've experienced something just as awful."
Mhm.
And he said, yes. Now, he's 12 years old. The attention span of 12-year-olds is not a long period of time.
Right.
But we set up this Skype call, and we needed a translator because I call them kids. I've adopted them. They're my sons and daughters, but they're in their 30s now. And at the time, they were in their early 20s, so a little bit older than JT. But we set up this Skype call with the translator, and I stood back and watched for an hour and a half
Wow.
my kids talking to JT and his friend. And I realized, again, another moment of grace comes over me that says, this is what I was thinking. I didn't even know. And so I came back afterwards and I said, well, where's JT? And his mom said, well, he's in his room. He's getting ready to go to school tomorrow. He had not gone back to school for like 2 months.
Mm.
And he comes out. I said, hey, what are you doing? He said, I was writing a speech that I'm going to give tomorrow, telling my classmates why we should support other people around the world who've had it worse than we have.
Wow.
I'm
Incredible.
fighting back the tears. And that's what he did the next day, was go to school, 12 years old, and did this. And then he ended up raising money, sending 2 of the ambassadors to university.
Incredible.
His life was changed.
Right.
His friend's life was changed because they were able to think about people who
And
had it.
this is where we can continue to pass on and pass on and pass on, and in that connection to
Yeah,
others in the world. Where can
total.
people find this documentary? And you, Lori, you're just a wealth of information, a wealth of experience, and just a wonderful person that people should be able to get in touch with you at some point if they
Oh,
so
I so
desire.
appreciate that. Yeah. So my website is drloryleyden.com. So drloryleyden.com. The documentary is on there for free. I've got a ton of downloadable ebooks that can get people more into this process, this heart map, which I now have used all over the world. We're using this. I went on to Parkland for 2 years after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting, and then in between, I go back and forth to Australia to work in Aboriginal and refugee communities. All the while offering these training people in these strategies. And most recently, what is touching my heart is I'm working with 40 Ukrainian uh, leaders,
Oh,
um, and teaching them these strategies to help in ongoing war. And I
sure.
think people don't really appreciate, literally our sessions are interrupted with drones and electricity going on and off and no
Mm.
water. And I mean, people forget how
Yeah, we can't
har
appreciate the horrors that others are going through.
exactly. But all I know is this works in all these different communities. So I'm
I also want to put this book up because this is the Grace book that Lori actually has written. And it is not something you read once, but you continue to delve in different parts of it and embody it as she says, embodying grace as you go along. But thank you, Lori. I really, really appreciate the time and the sharing of information. And your heart is so full,
thank you
which
so much.
fills others, including
Thank you
me.
so much. Thank you for sharing me with your audience.
Thank you for joining the conversation today. If you are seeking help for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to our Feinberg Consulting team at 248-538-5425. That's 248-538-5425, and check out our website at feinbergcare.com. I'm grateful for our guests and all who have joined us today. Make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.